Here we are with our third episode of UU Campus Q's, where we take your actual questions about UU Campus Ministry and find some answers. I'm your host, Reverend Annie Gonzalez-Milliken, the Young Adult and Campus Ministry Associate for the Unitarian Universalist Association. Along with having an absurdly long name and title, I support volunteers, religious educators, faculty, students, and ministers with the sacred work of serving the spiritual needs of UU college students. So let's jump in. Today's question is from Yvonne Marceau, a student at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. She said, I was wondering, what do people actually do in their campus ministry meetings? I realized that my group in high school was all such good friends that finding things to do was never an issue, so now I have very little idea of what we should do. Any suggestions would be extremely helpful. That's a great UU Campus Q, and for today's answer we have two very special guests. Our first guest is Alice King, who has 9 years of experience doing campus ministry in San Diego, California, and is now living in Virginia as an intern minister and also a student at Meadville Lombard. We also have Kayla Parker with us, who served for 3 years as the campus ministry associate at the UUA and is also an intern minister as well as a student about to graduate from Yale Divinity School. So Alice, what suggestions do you have for Yvonne in activities to use for campus ministry as a student leader?
Well, first I want to say I'm very grateful for this question because I asked it for 9 years. And I tried lots of things. So I'm just going to run through a list that I made of the things that I tried. Some of which really worked so well and some of which didn't. Some of which worked the first time but not the second, or the second time but not the first. So the first thing that I tried to keep in mind was why we were there as campus ministry. So as to answer those central spiritual questions: who am I and why am I here? Then the other thing that we did at UCSD was we did, and at San Diego State as well, is we did a chalice lighting. And then every time, and we lit candles. So people would check in, and then they would, when they were done, they would light a candle. And that sort of signified, okay, we're here. We can let go for a few minutes of everything else that's going on and just be here. And then the things that I tried, then we would have a, just some sort of program where I brought readings. Sometimes we did the readings from the common bowl. So I would put readings in a bowl, people would select them, and then they would read them, and then we would talk about what had been meaningful and then how it applied to our lives. Then we would do some sort of checkout, and then we'd have snacks, always snacks. And we'd extinguish the candles with that. So the things that I worked with, the materials that I used the book Heart to Heart, which has different sections in it and we often would sing as well as do the readings and the discussion. If we could find a song. We were a small group, and some years were better than others in terms of the singing and what people knew, but it did help people know what the songs were. The other book that I used was 7 Principles in Word and Worship. And it is laid out in there to be sort of a program that includes a chalice lighting, includes readings, and so I used that. And Evensong was another thing that I used, but not all of them. I used Michael Tino's Covenant Group materials. I found those really useful. The thing that I noticed was that it was better to have one-shot things than try to have a program where you built on things. And then there's another one that's with the turtle, Finding Our Spiritual Home. That's what it's called. And that one was really useful. But again, that's a program that one session builds on another. So often I would take just pieces. And also it was very useful that I got paid to do this work. And this was not student dependent. And they were very appreciative of that too. They understood, and I understood, that they were there to be students. And this was a time for them to come. And it wasn't that they didn't participate. They would do worship, but not every single time. It was very much, they wanted someone to come in and have something that would be there for them. And I was glad to do that. And then whatever that was current, what may have been going on campus, what may have been going on in the world. So for today's times, if I were still there, we would be talking about Black Lives Matter, and we'd be talking about the election and what's going on with it and the dynamics that are happening. And then I was lucky enough to be working in conjunction with a church. So we would often take the transformational themes, the worship themes of the month, and that would be one of the sessions. And then we adopted some parts of the OWL curriculum, not the whole thing, but just some of the activities that are in there. That was really useful. And then at San Diego State, what the students came up with was doing something different each time. So we met each week as well. And so the first week of the month, we did a discussion about something. The second week, we went outside and did some activity outside. The third week, we had worship, and the fourth week was a service project. That was the theory. It was a little more difficult to do that, but I love the idea of doing something like that. And then two more things that I'll share is one of the best and most remembered nights is when I would try to do every 3 to 4 years a night on home and what that meant. And I think that came from the Finding Our Spiritual Home curriculum, and we would talk about what their home was like that they had come from, and then what was meaningful to them about that, what they wanted to let go of from home, and what they wanted to bring with them as they created home for themselves. And then we would talk about being like a turtle and being able to carry our homes with us wherever we went and being able to create that. And at the end, I made sure that I gave them a little turtle bead or ceramic turtle or something, a little tiny, not very expensive thing that they could take with them. So those are some of the things that we did. And then when the Becoming book came out, we used a lot of materials from that.
Thank you so much, Alice. I really appreciate
You're
all of
welcome.
that. And then Kayla, Alice mentioned at the end the Becoming book, which I know you edited, but I'm curious what suggestions you have in general from your experience as campus ministry associate, and then if you have any insights about using Becoming in a campus ministry setting.
Yeah, so we'll start there with Becoming because Alice transitioned so beautifully into that for me. And I think Becoming is a small meditation manual guide and can be used as a resource like many of the other ones that Alice mentioned. And the hope for Becoming is that it could be really easily adapted into a campus ministry or young adult small group ministry worship setting. So like Alice was saying, oftentimes groups will start with a chalice lighting and then maybe a check-in. And then we'll often want to have some sort of discussion or slightly worshipful element. And then with a closing reading. So every theme in Becoming's organized into, I think it's 10 themes, I forget now. And every theme has 2 opening words or chalice lighting words, 2 closing words, and as well as 2 reflections from Unitarian Universalist young adults on that theme. And then there are about 8 poems or prayers. So those can all be used as materials for your small group ministry or worship. Either the reflections or the prayers or poems can be used as something to read liturgically or to start discussion for. So the hope for that is really that they can be a helpful resource for regular sort of campus ministry groups, so a little bit different than maybe the service project that you all might want to do once a month or once a semester, but really for regular meetings. And I think I found that most campus ministry groups have some sort of meeting that follows that structure, whether they're meeting once a week or twice a month, and that having something that you all don't need to put too much effort into planning is really helpful. So that's why finding a resource that works well for you, whether it's Becoming, whether it's the Heart to Heart or the Soul to Soul, which I think is the newer one that Alice mentioned before, some sort of program that you might not want to do fully, like Alice was saying, but can pull from, will just make things really helpful. So, if at the beginning of the year, in the summer, or when you all start meeting, you're able to look through some of those different curriculums and figure out what works well for you, that should make things a lot easier throughout the year, especially if you don't have someone like Alice who's able to be coordinating that for you.
Thanks, guys. And thank you for watching UU Campus Cues, where your campus ministry questions get answered. If you have a question about UU Campus Ministry, you should email it to campusministry@uua.org or tweet it with the hashtag UUCampusCues. Join us next time.